We're live. Okay, cool. Just in the nick of time, we got everything ready. So, yeah, I think we're off and running, guys. So, welcome to Talking Talent Live. I'm Jay Rusden, head of marketing at Video My Job, and we're here once a month seeking out the doers, the innovators, so we can get practical insights to do employer brand activation better. So, drop us a hello in the chat if you're there. Drop an emoji, a wave, whatever floats your boat there. So, also just a quick welcome to our co-host Keela.
Hello, good morning, everyone, or good evening if you're dialing in from the old country, US of A.
Yeah, it's actually been a little while. It's probably been about 6 months since we've done a session that's been suitable for our friends over in the US as well as Australia. So yeah, wrap to be able to get back over there to the US audience as well. So next we're just going to welcome Brooke Clark to Talking Talent. Jump on the camera, Brooke. Give us a hello.
Hello.
Let's wait to see her face.
There
Hello,
you are.
hello, good morning, good evening.
Good morning. Actually, good evening for me. Nice to see you both.
Lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us.
All right. And Kelly, do you want to just do the
Here.
acknowledgement of country before we?
Yes. So for everyone that's joined the call today, we'd like to acknowledge the elders past, present, and emerging in Australia and guests joining in from all over the world. Welcome to our acknowledgement of country. It's really special to us in Australia. And thanks for joining.
Okay, so a couple of call outs before we kick into it. So I think this time around, yeah, because of your kind of presence over there in the US, Brooke, we've probably got a bit of broader audience than what we normally have just in Australia here. So if you're new to Talking Talent, this is you can check that out on Spotify, YouTube. We've got a whole bunch of episodes there, a mix of kind of Aussie practitioners as well as US people like Brooke. So yeah, check that out if you're new to Talking Talent. Killers, any other call outs you had as well?
Yeah, for any of our Australians on the line today, we know that there's been a lot of redundancies made in TA in the last few weeks, and I'm sure that's not special to our country, it's everywhere. But two incredible roles in employer brand have been popped up with AFL, so Australian Football League, and REA, realestate.com. TA brand, lead level, so they're looking for some senior folks to hop in and apply, and I can't speak higher of the LT that sits on those teams. So definitely, if you're looking for a role, those two are incredible and have my backing.
Okay, cool. And lastly, ask questions, guys. Drop them in the chat. Ask your questions. Don't miss the opportunity. And if you impress our producer Paul, he might just pick you for one of our giveaway kits that we'll send out. We'll make sure we'll let you know by the end of the session who's got the best question. But yeah, you got to impress Paul. He's the guy. So, Brooke, let's kick it off. So some of our, obviously we got introduced to you by James Ellis, which was great. I love it when we get referrals. It's always exciting to have somebody really interesting like James, and then for him to put your name forward as the next person we should continue the journey with. That's cool. Looking at your profile, one of the things that jumped out at me is you're one of those people that's come from that marketing and PR background and then transition across to recruitment. So do you want to just kind of break the ice a bit? Tell us about that transition from marketing to recruitment. How, why? Tell us that story.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And like so many of my friends and peers in this space, I don't know many people who went to school for this specifically. I think a lot of us just kind of fell into it, and that was the same for me. So I got my degree in PR, which was essentially public relations. It's a journalism degree. Did some work during the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, and I got that degree because I'm somebody who always wants to uncover the story behind the story. I think there's always a story to everything. And so got that degree, spent a few years in PR and marketing, and then followed most of my friends' cohort into recruiting. A bunch of my friends did recruiting. It sounded super interesting to me. One, because I think in recruiting, there definitely is a story behind the story element. And I am also a connector of people and a connector of dots. I think that is my life's purpose. And I found the recruiting and then the employer branding space as me being able to really do it all. in that space. And then my final, I wouldn't say final, but what I'm up to right now is I have moved into a business operations role within the company that I work for. So it's been this really interesting evolution, but it's been a journey, and I'm enjoying it.
My favorite question from grad level is when they ask, like, did you study this in college or uni in Australia? And I'm like, no, like Facebook didn't really even exist when I was in uni. Like it existed, but not even as an ad platform. It was just to find out which lacrosse party I was going to over the weekend. Like it had no business purpose whatsoever. So yeah, I feel like you and I are in the same boat with that.
And when you made that transition, do you think you realized at the time how transferable all of the marketing skills would become as you moved from recruitment more into talent attraction and then employer brand and all these kind of things came into it? Do you think you realized at that time, or was that you kind of fell into that and those skills became really powerful as you moved further forward?
Yeah, I think that I think it all just, it was an easy transition. And I think it's because I'm a naturally curious person. And again, it goes to, I think every person has a story. I think every company has a story. And it was very easy for me to just ask the question and dig deeper and find the story, whether it was in PR, whether it was in agency recruiting. I had so many different kinds of clients that I had to really understand what all of the different clients did and really become a subject matter expert in those areas. And then coming in-house within a company, I didn't know the first thing about biotech. I kind of didn't pay much attention in Bio 101 my freshman year of college, right? Like it was in one ear and out the other. And so I had to really get a better understanding of that world and get really curious and find out again what the story behind the story was.
Yeah. Okay. So let's jump into the first topic. So the first focus area here, Brooke, is really about the evolution of the role. Like you started to open up to that a little bit before around that latest transition into operations. But if we go way back, you've had a really good tenure there where you've told us where you've gone from 40 people to 500, that 10-fold increase. So two things. You want to tell us a little bit about Recursion, because I'm guessing a lot of people, unless you've kind of in certain fields, you might not be familiar with who they are. And then really curious on how the needs of the business changed over that time, and then how did you have to adapt the strategy, but also yourself as a leader?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm always excited to talk about Recursion. So Recursion, to those of the listeners who don't know, we are a clinical stage AI-enabled drug discovery company. And what we are trying to do is industrialize how medicines are discovered and made. And I'll give a little bit of context here. I'm not going to dive too deep into the science, but what I will say is this. I'm going to say something that's pretty sad, which is it can take 10 years and $2 billion to get a medicine into patients. And that is really, really frustrating considering how the power of computing has skyrocketed, how the cost of computing has gone down in this world in which we're seeing driverless vehicles and all kind chat GPT and all of these things. We're seeing technology rise, but we're seeing the pace of medicines just kind of stay the same. And if you've ever lost a loved one to a disease or have a loved one who suffers from a disease, that's really frustrating. And so we are working to employ the top, the best in AI to make that happen. And so it's an exciting company. We have 4 drugs in the clinic. And again, when I joined, we were this tiny little 40-person startup that came out of the University of Utah and was based in Salt Lake City. And now we are a company of about 500, and we have location in Salt Lake City, in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, an office in Montreal, and an office in Toronto. And so it's been a really exciting journey to join a really scrappy startup where I had to start pretty much the TA function from scratch to where it is today. And then later on, we can talk a little bit more about my move into business operations. So that is the answer to the first question. And then I can also segment into sort of how that's looked. What I will say about my experience at Recursion is that the company has changed. It continues to evolve, which is something that I love about working there. but it almost feels like it's changed. It's like almost a new company every 6 months.
Wow.
And so I have had to adapt, and I have had to lead others to adapt to a new way of working, because we quickly pivot into different disease areas. A lot of biotechs and a lot of pharma companies are very focused on the disease area that they work within. Maybe it's metabolic diseases, maybe it's neuro-related diseases, and they kind of stick to those things. Based on the science that our company is doing, we quickly need to pivot, and we have to react to that. And so we've had to move into whole new functions. We've had to hire a whole swath of neuroscientists out of nowhere, out of thin air. We've moved, as we've been successful, we've moved drugs into the clinic. And that means we had to hire a whole department of people who are clinical development specialists. And that can be really hard when you're trying to attract a talent base where you're not known for one disease area. So it has it's required a lot of adapting, and it has, as I led a team, it required some calmness and enthusiasm and curiosity that I tried to bring into the team so that they could handle that pivot well, and not only handle it well, but rise to the occasion.
So you're competing against other pharma companies. Tell me, yeah, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, so tell me about the draw to your organization. I'd assume that it's values led, and that's why people want to come and work there. Obviously, want to flex tech, and working for medicine is obviously so important. But tell us a little bit more about the draw specifically to Salt Lake City and wanting to work for your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what draws a lot of people to Recursion is what we are doing. So we are involving technology at the very beginning of the drug discovery phase. And so we are employing sort of the latest and greatest in machine learning and AI, and that is really, really exciting to scientists who want to join us. So a lot of biotechs out in the space, any one of them could say, join us, we're going to save lives, we're going to help patients. If you want to have your mark on human health, come join us. But if our value proposition to a scientist is join us and be able to access the latest and greatest in tech, be able to sort of cut through some of the red tape, be able to be a part of a very disruptive, a company that's really disrupting the industry. And so people who want that kind of sense of urgency and the pace and being able to think about things in a new way, those are the people that we are trying to attract. We have found that people who are more part of a very academic, kind of tried and true, pathway driven science may not be the best fit for us, right? So you can't be all things to all people.
Yeah, I think opting in and opting out are equally as important as each other. We've talked about that in the last few episodes. It's not just about talent attraction. I'd love to hear a little bit more. And there are some some questions coming up in the chat, so we'll get to those in a moment. Awesome questions coming through. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you establish your employer brand function to support this EVP. It's so unique.
Yeah, it is unique. And I think, and I'll go back to one, I will fold in part of the question you asked was about Salt Lake City.
Yes.
So yes. When I joined Recursion, about 40 people, what we knew was this: we needed to be able to tell a story to scientists to say, if you want to disrupt an industry and you want to work with really amazing tech, join us. If you are a technologist, if you are in automation, if you are in software engineering, if you are in machine learning, data science, any of the applied mathematics, our value proposition was join us if you do not want to put your skills to use by building an app or optimizing for ads. If you want to have an impact on human health, join us. And then we also asked of our proposition for our business professionals was, if you want to work for a really dynamic, non-boring company where you have great pay, great benefits, and working with really smart, driven people, join us. And so we knew that right away. Like that was clear to me day one at Recursion. And so we really captured that. And I think that really still rings true. And when we decided we needed to invest more in the employer branding function was when we started needing to have more of a global approach to attracting talent and needed to move into the Canadian market. And we're just coming up against companies who are follow-on companies who are trying to do what we're doing. And so the landscape got even more competitive. And early on, we had to attract talent to Salt Lake City, Utah, which is known for our snow. We had a record snow year this year. We are known for our snow. We're known for a lot of great things. Being a biotech hub was not one of them. And so it posed a really big challenge. And so over the years, we've really tried to invest time, money, effort, bandwidth to EB efforts. Because of that, we were facing an uphill battle.
Yeah, I was telling the guys, like what my knowledge of Salt Lake City is that it's quite progressive with the festivals and the snow, and there's a vibe in that city. But I wouldn't think of it as tech, as any form of a tech hub. And maybe that's just like, negligence. I haven't lived in the States for 10 years. Maybe things have changed, but it's so interesting hearing your journey. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you set up EB now that you like I mentioned, you had such a unique EVP for these three different segments that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that what we did, so first of all, we started thinking about this early. And when early on, we started thinking about just, again, we'll probably talk about like blocking and tackling, like how you write a job posting, a job ad, how we wrote our copy around candidate communication, and even the communications if somebody didn't get the job, how we started utilizing and employing the work of our hiring managers in posting things on LinkedIn, how we evolved our career page, things like that. And so we did some really scrappy stuff early on. And then we ended up bringing on James Ellis to come in and do some work for us. He's an employer branding leader in this leader in this space. And he really brought to us sort of next level thinking around utilizing analytics and data to help us make decisions, looking at things like LinkedIn and Glassdoor Analytics, did some really remarkable work in capturing employee stories through video and did some really great work there. And so, and helped us again kind of start to tell our story as we've moved into the Canadian market. And so we got to put some more money behind it, but Recursion continues to be scrappy and tries to use our resources well.
Is there a specific program that you feel really launched your employer brand, both internally and externally, to help you, especially as you were scaling?
I think it would probably be enlisting the ambassadorship of our hiring managers in telling their story and us amplifying their voice. Because when an individual and collectively, when individuals are looking to join a company, oftentimes, yes, the company is a company, an attractive company to look out. Yes. But tell me about the team. Tell me about the work that happens. Tell me about the manager, and if the manager's good, or the grouping of managers if you're a really big company, and enlisting their help in order to help them tell the story. And so going back to the story behind the story, what is it for a team? What can candidates know about a specific team that helps them say, hell yes, I'm going to apply to this position, click, I am interested, or yes, I'm going to accept this offer. And so it's in how our managers and our hiring managers tell the story. It's in how we write the copy to have them read a posting and say, hell yes, I'm applying, go, or I'm putting in my 2 weeks. I have to join Recursion. I know I've got a lot at stake at this other company, but I'm signing up for this job. And it's just in how we tell the story. broadly. And again, it's really difficult because we have so many different talent segments that we're talking to.
You're infectious. I feel like we're both going to jump ship and get a hop on a plane, come work for you. Sorry.
Come on up to Salt Lake.
David asked a really great question. I think we're all wondering it. You know, there's this crux between aspirational messaging for your employer brand, truth telling, and then, you know, wanting to communicate what it's really like in your day to day. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey with that? How you've had to balance that messaging specifically because you've had to scale so quickly over the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that this goes back, and this is me personally talking. I think this goes back to not being all things to all people and telling the damn truth about joining a company, right? Like, I think if a if a individual is looking to join Recursion, they can be assured that they are working with incredible tech. We've got over 20 petabytes of data that we're working with, which is an incredible, mind-blowing amount of data that we're working with, right? Like, we're working on solving some really hard problems within oncology. We treat and have treated our employees very well from a comp philosophy over the years. You work hard at Recursion, you're rewarded for it. This is not a company where it's a lifestyle kind of a company where you can join and take every afternoon off to ski or, you know, work half days, or that's not what you sign up for when you join Recursion. And so it's sort of like being really honest with people early on that you're going to work hard, you're going to contribute, you're part of something that's bigger than yourself, but it takes sacrifice. It takes a lot of sacrifice. For our employees.
You're getting a lot of kudos in the chat. Bowden just said, telling the damn truth. That's something you can build a brand.
I'm going to make a t-shirt, tell the damn truth.
Yeah, tell the damn truth. With like a collar that you can just, you know, pull. Katie asked a great question around storytelling. It's not a skill that most people are born with. Tell us a little bit more about how you operationalize that in your strategy, specifically for TA, making sure that they can tell the story of the brand.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I would say that we had an individual on our team named Aaron Pa, who was a phenomenal, he's since moved on from Recursion, but a dear friend. And he is probably the best talent storyteller I know. And he taught me a lot about this over our time together at Recursion. And a lot of it was him teaching the hiring managers, again, going back to teaching other people how to tell the story. And I think, again, James's work in prompting people to tell the story through the power of video. So through the power of video, through the power of a well-written job ad, which is like basic level stuff, but just let me tell you a story about what this team has done, what they've accomplished, what this type of manager is doing. This is who you're reporting to. And by the way, they're a total badass and they help develop their people. People want to know that kind of thing.
They do. So I like to think that a lot of ads can be templated, but giving it that individual flair so you can learn about the team, learn about the hiring manager, people you're going to be working with. That's everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was going to say it's a good segue to the next topic, which was around, because we've got some really good examples there around, you know, that really, you know, specific, gritty, tangible activations, right? Those stories, videos, the job ad side of things, enabling the TA team. So then the next topic is really about, okay, well, communicating those activation outcomes back to stakeholders, whether they be the hiring managers, executives, or leaders in the business. So, you know, we know this can be a really big challenge for, you know, people working in the space. So yeah, I want to kick it off with this topic, and we've got a few follow-up things around it. So how do you, Brooke, distinguish between some of the things that are the good metrics or the good indicators that you and your team would be really rapt about, you know, versus what are those high value, high impact things that the business really cares about? Like, how do you distinguish and think about those two topics?
Yeah, I love that question. And I moved into a business operations role about 8 months ago. And now having this opportunity to be embedded within the business, I think about things in a little bit of a different way, which I think is really cool. And what I can see now as being embedded in the business is the power of transformational hires. the people, the talents that we're able to attract, and what those hires actually mean to the bottom line. So I think sometimes in TA, we fill the seat. We've got the rec, we've got we've got the people, we've got the interviews, we get the offer in, and we're on to the next thing. And when you can make a whole grouping of hires where they are literally transforming the business, when they have an idea that springs out of their head that makes them think, wow, what if we approach this way of solving some big problem, and having the boldness to be able to go after that, and you hire a bunch of people like that, that really transforms a company. And I'm even thinking too about business roles that we've hired for, and how you put some really key leaders and people in roles, and they act as multipliers, and then they hire amazing people. You end up having full teams of people who save money, who make smart decisions, who move science forward. And I will look back, and I will now be in a meeting with scientific leaders and business leaders and tech leaders, and remember the outreach strategy of how to get them, how we actually got them, and now how we're seeing the business impact of their work, and then follow on how they are inspiring a whole new generation of employees that then again impact the business.
Yeah. And so I imagine
I could talk for hours about that.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. It's the first time we've heard that on the program. Like it's those really like you're talking about like the force multipliers, right? Those people that is super high impact. And I was curious for throw to Keela for some follow-up questions around, okay, how, and because you just mentioned before, you're able to articulate, okay, these programs, this activation approach, or this, that we executed on played a pivotal role in helping attract those individuals to the business. And so where does the connection happen? Where are you identifying that? I imagine it's probably more qualitative, like you're speaking to that individual hire and you're finding out what journey they went through, and they're telling you from their own voice and heart that that's what attracted them to the business. Is that accurate, or is there a bit more to how you're tying it together?
Yeah, it's sort of hard to measure. I'm thinking about a couple of different examples, and I'll share two stories if that's okay. So one goes back to a really I won't name any names, but we have a number actually of individuals who, when interviewing them, and these are like really key scientific people that we were really excited to get, and it came back to them, they looked at an ad and said, this doesn't look like all the other bullshit biotech ads that are out there. This spoke to me, and I'm really interested in this. And they joined the company, and they were transformational. And then they ended up hiring people who were transformational that we would not have gotten had they not been hired. So to your point about force multipliers, the other sort of activation kind of story that was really interesting was, we had a really, really hard time attracting top machine learning talent, right? One of the hardest talent segments in the world to find. And we struggled, like we tried everything. And if you asked me years ago what kept me up at night, that would be it, how to find good ML talent. And one approach that we took, and this was in concert with our data science leaders, but one thing that we decided to do was to make a portion of our data set available for what they call a Kaggle competition, which is giving some applied mathematics people access to data to start manipulating. And we did a competition, and the people who were the winners of the person who was one of the winners of the competition ended up being somebody that we hired, and is doing a phenomenal job and has been transformational in his own right. And so we had to get really creative in how we found this talent, because again, we were a tiny little biotech startup in Salt Lake City. And those things are sort of hard to track. I would love to be able to set some time aside to figure out like quality of hire and brand activation strategy and the how those things intersect. But anecdotally, definitely hard to measure, but we see evidence of this every day.
They say hindsight is 2020. You've obviously been where you are for a few years. You've moved roles, significant changes in your role. What would you have done differently?
Oh, I love that question. So I'm somebody who really believes in recognizing and learning from failure and recognizing when you have missteps. I would say my biggest learning at Recursion, especially early on, was trying to do too much too quick. And I think some of it had to do with the pace of Recursion, and it's still that way. It's very fast paced. I think what I myself and what I led the team to do was just try to boil the ocean, try to do all the things all at once instead of taking a step back and saying, God, how do we make this part of a roadmap? How do we make this a phased approach, 3-4 phases, and how do we get the highest impact, lowest cost? Like, how do we get an outcome from high impact, low cost instead of all the things all at once, which made for very, very, very long days for myself and for the team.
We've actually talked about that a lot in the last few episodes, about like that phase 1, phase 2, and just being okay with getting it off the ground in the first year. And then the second year, you build your wish list and your roadmap. You articulated it much better than I did in my episode. So thank you. And you've just talked about boiling the ocean and taking it on yourself. Tell us a little bit more about how you mobilized your team, specifically like your leaders, your hiring managers, your own TA team. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I love that. And I have a story that I would say in the last few years, I'm the most proud of at Recursion, and how our talent acquisition / EB team rose to the challenge, and how our hiring managers rose to the challenge. So a while back, Recursion signed a very transformational partnership with Roche Genentech. So a very strong, well-known pharma partner. And one of the areas that we needed to hire within was in neuroscience. That was not an area where we had a lot of deep expertise. And it was confidential information. It was like we didn't know, like just all of a sudden one day we were told, okay, all of a sudden hire the best of the best in neuroscience. Go, you need to post these 40 positions within a week, and they were all so unique and so different. And we were somebody who takes job postings very seriously and had to set up sort of the infrastructure and all of these things. And we did it. Like, the team rose to the challenge. And again, it was kind of like, let's get curious about this. Let's get excited about this. All of a sudden, overnight, we have to become known as, we need to be able to be known in the neuroscience space, and we need to be able to have some credibility to attract that talent. And so we had to really move fast and do a really big sprint in order for all of that to happen, and to get all of those positions out and able to educate ourselves about the space. The second part of that was how we worked with our hiring managers to adapt our process to be more streamlined and quicker. We needed to make these hires very quickly. And that was something that we were, I would say, a really strong business partner to those hiring managers, to look at the process and say, how can we find the best of the best? How can we evaluate them in a fair and inclusive and equitable way? And how do we deliver as a talent acquisition and an EB function so that we can hire the best people in this space, so that we can deliver on a really significant promise that we made to our partner in Roche and Genentech? And then at the end of the day, how can we make sure that these people that we hire are so transformational that not only are we delivering on this partnership promise that we made, but we are exceeding? And that at the end of the day, at the end of all of this, how do we make sure that this hire or these hires that we made in this area are getting medicines to the patients who need them? So it was It was inspiring a team to work nights, weekends to make this happen. And now when I sit next to my peers in an all hands meeting, I look around the room sometimes and think you were part of that sprint.
Yeah. How cool is that? I think it's these pressure cooker moments that can make or break the trust that the business has with your team, specifically in TA. It's not transactional. It's very much a relationship that you're looking to build. But one mess up, one hire that's messed up can ruin everything that you've built in the past. I think everyone on the call has experienced that in the past. Thank you for telling that story. I love the stories that you're sharing. I could listen to all day. Jay, maybe you want to help us move on to the next topic. Otherwise, we will be talking all day about this.
Yeah. So actually, we've got one question from David, which was similar to one other topic, just to wrap up that last one, which is around just the broader topic of ROI. Like, how do we think about, okay, this is the cost, the resources, the people we need to run these employee brand activities and get content out to market. So, what's the simplest version in your mind, Brooke, around how to tie together those costs and business investments to the return that the business expects? Like, how would you explain that internally to, say, a stakeholder that's not working in the TA space?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, again, tying back to the overall business goal, right? And being able to start at what the company itself is trying to accomplish. And what we are trying to accomplish is we are trying to collect data, and we are trying to make data-driven decisions. We are trying to deliver on partnerships. We are trying to create our create our own new chemical entities and drugs. And so I will always try to tie it back to that and say, like, it's sort of an art and a science. It's really hard to say we invested this much in LinkedIn, or we invested this much in a Glassdoor campaign, or something, or $40,000 in videos or something like that. But if we can say, look, we need to look at investing in trying to attract these different talent segments that maybe we're struggling to find, or we need to continue to have a strong footing in that market. Here are the things in a roadmapped approach to be able to say, this is how we're going to get them. This is how we're going to maintain our brand within these different talent segments. This is where we think we can invest now. This is where we think we can invest later, instead of one big invoice or one big ask showing how it can lead to transformational hires. And it's really hard, right? Like, if I could solve the quality of hire dilemma that everybody wishes they could solve, I would be a happy person.
You'd be a rich,
but again,
famous person.
I'd be a rich, happy person.
You'd be everything person.
Yeah. So I hope that answered the question. So
Totally.
it's tying back to business outcome, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely. I can relate to that from that marketing perspective, right? Nobody wants to know necessarily how many new followers we got or how many likes we got. What they want to know is, okay, we're driving this new product to this market. We need to grow that. We need to double our pipe. Like all these things that are top of mind in the leadership meeting, and it's like, well, what holistically, what are those programs we're going to run to help facilitate those from a marketing perspective? So yeah, I can relate from that angle. So you mentioned segments before, talent segments. So that's a really good setup for the next topic. So yeah, we just want to talk a bit about how and why to segment your talent audiences, and the strategy beneath that. But I want to open it up with, you started talking about this before, and I know from some of our other conversations that you're definitely passionate about not going to market with those vanilla messages like a me too. I'm just, and looking and sounding like those other options that candidates or talent might have. So I can see how you and James would have worked really well together. If you guys are talking that tune, that would have worked well. So within that context, maybe just open it up with a little bit about your mindset to talent segmentation in terms of what it means for delivering the right stories and messages. Just keen to understand your mindset to open it up.
Okay, I'd love to, and I could talk for hours about this particular topic. So as I mentioned earlier on in our conversation, this is something that we crystallized pretty early. This was something that probably week 2 at Recursion became very clear to me, which was we're looking at trying to track 3 different talent segments. And one was a deeply technical talent segment made up of data scientists, applied mathematicians, software engineers, automation experts. That's talent segment number 1. Talent segment number 2 is biologists, chemists, like just individuals who are very focused on the life science. And then the third would be just all of the what we call G&A, or general and administrative business functions. And they all have different things that motivate them. They have different stories that will motivate them. And so with our technical audiences, they are looking at maybe joining Recursion or Facebook, or locally it would be maybe Adobe or Qualtrics or other sort of tech related companies. And so joining us meant, okay, I can put my skills to use, having a really significant impact on human health, right? So we knew that having that sort of impact would be important to them. And so we wove that through all of our storytelling, all of our messaging, every word that we had focused on that for that talent segment. For the biology and chemists, yeah, you could really, for us to tell them, you come to Recursion, you're going to find medicines. They could do that anywhere. They could do that in any biotech. If you literally put the career site of 5 different biotechs or pharmas, and took away the names, you would not know which one was which. They are all the same. Come to our company and you're going to impact human health. That doesn't land for them. What lands for them is the fact that if they joined Recursion, they would have a ground floor opportunity to really disrupt the way that drugs are made. A lot of scientists spend their entire careers working on something that fails in, clinical trials. And so they want to have the biggest, again, impact on science, and they want to do it through a whole new innovative approach. And then with the third talent segment, it is about business folks, HR, accounting, finance, procurement. It is, come join a nimble, interesting company that is doing things in a unique way and is going to challenge your brain, and you're going to work with really, really smart people. And you will have an impact every month when you are doing a month-end close, every month when you're writing a press release, every month when you are working with a vendor to save money. You know that at the end of the day, you are impacting patients, and you are working at a company that is doing like the most wild things in tech, and you're getting paid for it. So it all came down to impact. And so what we did was we just took that theme of impact across those 3 different talent segments and told stories around them. And sometimes we had to be scrappy, and sometimes we got to put a little bit of money behind it.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned, and sorry, we didn't brief you on this question, but you've just got me like so interested and curious about your EVP and how you've segmented. You mentioned before that the business, it feels like it changes every 6 months. We know as employer brand professionals, your employer brand or EVPs usually only have to be refreshed every 2 to 3 years. Tell me about the longevity of your EVP if your business is changing so significantly and so frequently.
Yeah. So I think the beauty of this is that I don't know if it's evolved all that much. I think that it comes down to two different elements of the EVP. One is the ability for people to have an impact. So impact came through from day one.
That's your overarching.
So impact
messaging.
Overarching across all of the different talent segments from literally day one to right now. If I looked back and looked at a bunch of interview notes from candidates, the word impact or the sentiment around impact always comes through. There is also another theme that probably isn't associated with this word, but the sentiment is there. And this came out of an EVP exercise that we did last year, which is the concept of change, and how people who want to join us want to change or disrupt how medicines are being discovered because the world needs it, right? And so people who are those activators who are a little bit rebellious and want to think about things through a new lens, they're the ones who want to join us. And they also want something in return, which is development, right? Recursion puts a lot of investment in the development of its people. And so that led to this tag, which was your work will change lives, including your own, which I thought was made a lot of sense for Recursion. You are going to work, you are going to change lives, but also you are going to grow and develop and build a better, stronger mind for it.
Incredible. Love it.
You can tell I'm pretty passionate about this stuff.
Seriously, like it's a pleasure to hear from somebody that loves it so much. We got another question about measurement, but I guess right now is the perfect time to ask it around EVP. Really enjoying this. Thanks, Brooke and team. Brooke and Keela, can you please expand on measuring the success of an EVP program? They mention, the general measurements of success around engagement on socials, uplift in applicant volume, and it's difficult to directly link this back to EVP and TA metrics. Do you want to give it a little bit of a go about how you measure and like the specific things that you measure?
I will tell you what I personally look at, which may be a little different than others. So how I think about this, I don't think about it in terms of like your typical like time to fill or again, quality of hire is really hard to measure. I think about it through retention. So how people who actually stay at the company and who thrive. And we talked a little bit earlier about multipliers and how if you can retain multipliers who then hire people who are transformational hires who then get referrals and recruit people on their own who are significant. We think about things like that. I think referral programs are a double-edged sword. We probably don't have a lot of time to go into that today, but like, we think about that. We think about referrals and we think about quality of referrals. And then we think about engagement surveys and net promoter scores. And if people would refer their friends and family and business colleagues to Recursion. And I think that there's some real power in that. And I think that it's so much easier to be able to create these testimonial videos when people are really passionate about their work. Recursion has a whole bank of really amazing employee I'm not going to say testimonials because that's not the right word, but like snapshots into what drives people and the work that they do. And I would encourage the listeners to look into some of those videos and to see, like, you think I'm passionate about this, you should like look at these videos and see how these employees are. So again, it's employee engagement, it's retention, it's referral, quality of referred candidates and things like that. But again, there's no like silver bullet ROI, I think, on these things, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I think I love that you've taken like that employee lifecycle approach and seen key moments in the employee lifecycle where you have points that you can measure their engagement at that point in time. I think that's so strong, and I absolutely agree with that. One of my favorite ways to measure EVP is the research that a candidate has done before applying to the organization that I work at. So right now I'm at Sportsbet. If you think about FanDuel in the States, that's us in Australia. And what I love is hearing from one of my TA business partners. This person that I just spoke to on the phone said that they read this blog on our LinkedIn, and that's what made them want to apply. Employer brand is such a long game. You know that somebody could read something today and not be like tickled to even think about applying for another 18 months. So when you get that feedback that it was the video of Sim and her daughter talking about being a supported parent at Sportsbet, and that's what made me like, I saw myself in that video and that made me feel okay to apply. Or the sports trader that's been like trading on the Greyhound since he's 4 years old with his uncles in Ireland. Like that was me too, and like you just have these like such beautiful stories of like just humans and connection. That's it for me. And I know that that's not a measurement and you can't tie a dollar amount or an ROI, but to me that's everything. And that's probably not enough to build a program, but as an EB professional, that is everything.
I would agree with that. And I think that, so there was a senior leader at Recursion who wrote an op-ed in the paper about women in the science and tech field. And there are multiple individuals who applied and were hired and really doing phenomenal work at Recursion who applied because they saw this op-ed. Back when I was hired, our co-founders wrote a letter, an open letter that was in regards to supporting immigration. And I was on the fence about clicking apply. And I read that and said, this is a CEO who takes a stand on really important matters. Click, I'm applying.
Yeah,
And we hear a lot of those stories in interviews.
Yeah, like we all have those moments. When I was looking, when Sportsbet had approached me, I just had twin boys. They were 4 months old, and I was still on mat leave, and I was not ready to go back to work. And I thought I'll just go through the process. They waited for me. They waited until we felt like we were in a place that I could go back to work, and our family could be supported through that. We all have those moments, and I think it's you got to capture those and tell those stories.
Cool. So I've just got one last question on segmentation before we finish up. That's our last topic. And obviously, Brooke, we've got that extra segment in the end where we've got a question from our last guest for you. But yeah, just one last question to finish off on that segmentation. I'm curious on, so we've talked about, okay, you guys had these 3 key segments, if I remember right. You had that common theme around impact across the top, and different stories and different EVPs and versions of it you want to tell. So was there any difference once the rubber hits the road down at that level of engaging those talent segments? Was there any difference in the channels that you're able to engage with those groups differently? Was there any difference in, say, content that played out as a result of that?
Yeah, I would say absolutely, because they're such different talent segments that I would say the power of presenting at scientific conferences and publishing scientific papers catches the eye of scientists, right? Like that was something that I never thought of when I was doing financial recruiting. And so that was something that was really surprising to me, and a channel that I think worked really well early on. So we would go to big AI, conferences or scientific conferences and put up a booth and host a happy hour. And that was a really unique approach that I don't think maybe some other, industries may utilize. I think LinkedIn, as everybody does, uses that. I just think it was just in how we told the story around it. I think that there was a lot of energy around internship hiring and building a brand, realizing that we needed to build an employer brand with interns even early, like career or early individuals in their academic career, like building a name around that. And what has been really, really cool over the years is when I first joined Recursion, it was a lot of going to these conferences and having a lot of like, who's Recursion? They kind of pass by the booth, like, oh, okay, I guess. And then some people, years later, it was, oh, I think I've heard of Recursion. I think y'all are up to really interesting stuff. And now, and this is indicative of like different scientific or financial conferences and things that we're at. Oh, I know Recursion. You're kind of the belle of the ball. Like you're doing really cool stuff. I've heard that you've got like 20 petabytes of data and you've got 4 drugs in the clinic and you've hired this person. And that evolution over time has been really interesting. And it's been interesting to see that evolution through how we're perceived in different channels.
Yeah, that would have been really satisfying. Like over that time you've been at Recursion, and go back and go from people like, who the hell are you to then you're like, yeah, that's like a fist pump moment. Like, oh, now they know us. Now we can talk more. Yeah.
And now Brooke's like,
yeah.
Welcome to my booth.
Awesome.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. So cool. That's the end of our main topic. So we're going to jump into the final segment. I think Keela's going to do the honors this time.
So we, every session, ask the previous speaker to leave a question for the next speaker. Do you want to cue the question? We're going to have it pop up on the screen in a sec.
All right, should I take from the top? Okay, so I would love to know if you could create your own dream talent brand activation, no budget, no red tape, no approvals, what would you do? I'd love to hear your dream big activation.
Okay, so people who know me know that I love to dream big. Something that would be a dream big moment. I'm highly interested in the power of video. I'm also very interested in innovation and tech. And I've been thinking a lot about there's so much power in being able to relay day in the life of. And I would love to take that sort of visual and experience into more of a VR setting. And this is a little bit futuristic, but like how could you program or create some experiential way to have somebody literally think about visually start their day at Recursion and doing a walkthrough of our lab and seeing all the amazing technology and instrumentation that we have and looking around and seeing a diverse group of employees and getting a feel for what it's like literally day in the life of, but being able to experience it in a new way. Probably not there yet, but to me, I think if a candidate could do that for even 30 minutes, I think we could get them.
Yeah, nice. I'm a bit of a gamer, so I love that concept.
You literally would be losing Jay via my job. He is going to Recursion.
Yeah.
You've been warned.
And then if I could actually get the job and then to stay in the VR and like do the job in there too, that like it just carries all the way through the journey. That
Yeah.
As long as you like have a bowl of Cheetos next to him and he's happy.
yeah, just don't get the controls all greasy. That's the
Yeah.
worst. Okay, cool. Thanks, Brooke. That was amazing. Loved it. Really crisp, clear points. Really looking forward to getting the recording out. Oh, I've just been told don't forget about the best question. So Paul.
We're also going to get Brooke to
Yeah, we got to get.
Oh,
Brooke's
sorry.
question
Yeah,
for
my
the
bad.
next-
We want to get your question. What's your question for the next guest? We can't tell you who it is at this point, but yeah, what would you like to ask the next guest on Talking Talent?
So I am somebody who thinks, again, very futuristically, and I want to know what the next guest thinks will be the new channel, the new activation strategy in 20 years.
20.
Fast forward 20 years. 20 years. What does that look like?
I'll tell you what, Brooke. I just saw a TikTok last night where a woman was sitting back at the salon and a robot was putting lashes on her. I feel like anything is possible. Once I've seen that, literally anything is possible. So 20 years. Okay.
Even 10 years if we're forced to think more short term.
Thank you so much for joining us, Brooke. It has been an absolute pleasure. You're infectious, and I'm so grateful that we were able to get you onto the show.
Nice to be here. Thanks for letting me tell my story.
All right, Paul, who's
the winner of the question?
So she did have to leave a little bit early, but thank you to Katie. It was a great question. So we'll be sending her our swag box. Really practical question, really practical advice. And thank you so much, Brooke. All
right, cool. Thanks, Keela, again. And yeah, if you'd like to keep up to date on all of our live sessions, highlights, as well as the recordings, yeah, make sure to jump on LinkedIn, follow Video My Job. That'll give you the little notification to subscribe to the Talking Talent newsletter. We're going to put everything there, including the recording and so forth. So yeah, happy days. Catch you all soon. Thanks, Brooke. See you. Bye.
Thank you.